Welcome to Do Commenters Understand Pot of Greed? I recently uploaded a Pot of Greed video and it's gotten a lot of comments. A lot of people have their own opinion about Pot of Greed and how good or bad it is. And what we have today is a collection of some intriguing comments. I won't say bad comments. We got some good, some bad, kind of in the middle, all sorts of things, things that spark discussion. I've brought MBT here today. We're going to talk about how we feel about these comments, but then the chat on Twitch, both of our chats are going to decide if that commenter understands Pot of Greed. So after we debate these comments for a little bit, the chat is going to vote whether or not they agree or disagree with the comment, which is going to determine if that commenter understood what they were talking about. Are you ready, MBT?
I think, is this purgatory? All right, your goal is to decide if the commenters or your chat is correct. I'm good, man. Yeah, all right, okay, I'm ready. Yeah.
All right, first comment. This is one that came up over and over and over again. In the video, I pretty much only talked about cards that literally said draw 2, so I missed a couple. A ton of people pointed out that Engage is at 3 and people aren't playing it. And as we all know, Engage, I remember hearing this comment, is better than Pot of Greed. It gets you a search and a draw. How do you feel about this Engage argument? This comes up a lot.
I feel that a significant amount of the individuals who play Yu-Gi-Oh! Only interact with Yu-Gi-Oh! As far as consuming like Yu-Gi-Oh! Dank meme compilation number 67.
Sure.
Right? Like, I don't think they've actually ever played the game. I think mostly what they're doing is like reading Reddit posts and then regurgitating the Reddit posts. Because this one, it's got the stink of Reddit on it. I can tell that upvotes can be put on the left of this one. No, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong every time everyone says it. The difference between Pot of Greed and Engage being that, Yu-Gi-Oh! Players tend to be like, well, a random draw is just like, it could be any bad card, but a search is a targeted good card.
Yeah.
It's just like an awful mentality to have.
Well, I think the big thing that they miss too, which I think is like, it's crazy that it gets missed all the time, because like Engage isn't being played in every deck, which I think is the argument, but Engage, you can't just play it in your deck. Like, first off, it doesn't draw a card unless you have 3 spells engraved, but also like you have to play targets for it. Like, I think that's a huge deal that it's like, yeah, it's searching is good, but like, can you even use those targets in a lot of the like,
if there was a deck that could consistently get 3 spells into the graveyard, at a moment's notice, and also maybe wanted some of the Sky Striker cards, it would be playing 3 Engage.
Yeah.
It would be almost a no-brainer, the same way Pot of Greed is. If you need a reference point for that, in Master Duel, Snake Eye can sometimes get 3 spells into the graveyard.
Yeah.
And like Sky Striker Snake Eye is a deck with tops,
It's
a
good
card.
Not ubiquitous,
Searches a limited pool of conditionally powerful cards. Pot of Greed just gets you 2 cards.
Let me know your thoughts, chat. Do you agree or disagree with this? Okay, on my stream, 87% of people disagree with this comment, which I think makes sense.
94% of people said the better card was Pot of Greed.
I'm going to say pretty uncontroversial take on that one. I think a lot of people don't like it.
They should make a ruling where if your deck only has cards from before a certain year, you can use Pot of Greed. Like 2010 and earlier, maybe.
So ignoring the fact that like it would be impossible to like make that ruling, let's say it's hypothetically possible. How would you feel about this? And maybe not even 2010 is a cutoff. Maybe it's like 2014.
You're asking me if you want me to add Yugi boomers to the list of protected classes under discrimination lawsuits. This is supposed to be some sort of affirmative action for people who stopped playing because synchros were too hard, right?
Yeah, give them a little bone,
Yeah, well, I'll give them something. Why don't I give them a piece of my mind?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like you said, it's completely unworkable. It's ridiculous.
Right.
But I think it would be fine. Like, if this could happen, I don't think it would change anything. I think those decks would still be ass.
I mean, what year would it have to be to, like, matter? Maybe 2015? I mean, I don't know if it ever would.
Legitimately, 2013, it starts being a problem. Like, once you start getting, like, spellbooks and dragon rulers, I could see playing, like... people have seen decent success with spellbook at, like, a rogue level now. Of course, it's just like playing Ecclesia and Dogmatica stuff, but like you would make a decision to be like, maybe I don't play Ecclesia and Dogmatica stuff, and I just jam Pot of Greed in there, and I like just Yogin them out. I could see that happening.
Got a couple people in my chat saying Exodia. I think, as someone that's played probably more Exodia than anyone in chat, at least, one of doesn't really change it, because like once your deck gets going, it like you just draw infinite. So I'm not sure, like it might increase your win percentage by like 5% or whatever. But let's see what chat, I got people in chat agreeing with this one. Let's see what you guys think about it.
All right, we got 78% of people said, fuck you, Yugi Boomer. I don't want this rule.
Kind of similar. I have 64%, which I think is kind of interesting. So, I think it wouldn't matter. And also it's like impossible to do, but I think hypothetically it would be okay. I think that would be okay. Now I'm wondering if Pot of Avarice let you shuffle from both graveyards, would it be OP? Going second, it would mostly be Pot of Greed, and you might even deny your opponent resources. Now we have recently seen Soul Release see play, and it, kind of similar thing here. I think this one, it might see a little play. I don't know if it'd be overpowered, but I think it would be, I think that could be an interesting take on Pot of Avarice. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think this card would be awesome. Do I think this card would be really good? Like super powerful? Yeah, for sure. Like I think this card would see a ton of play in a lot of side decks.
Yeah,
and in
good
a ton
thrust
of formats,
target.
It would be
good
like,
target.
Yeah, in a ton of formats, it'd be like, oh God, not this. But I think it would be sick. Like I think this card existing would be nice. Like it feels bad to have had to play Soul Release during that terrible time when everyone thought it was the best possible thing you could be boarding against Fire King Snake Eye.
Yeah.
It would be cool if there was a version that felt like modernized or something. And also I think it opens up a lot of really fun like post-board gameplay options for like, let's say you're a Snake Eye player, like now it behooves you to keep cards out of your graveyard. So maybe you engineer your combo a little bit different so you only end on like four. So your opponent has to commit before they fire Pot of Avarice. Or maybe you end in such a way that you've got a guy who can quick play Reanimate from the graveyard so that it fizzles the same way the Pot of Avarice would. I like this card. I like this.
Yeah, no, I like that. We'll say agree or disagree. Agree is going to be that this card should exist, I think.
All right, I got 78% of people said yes, they do want it, and one person contributed 80,000 points to that.
Holy
said,
shit.
I really want it.
I have, 82%. All right, Konami, get on it. We found the next pot card to print. I think it would be cool.
Oh, should note, this card cannot draw 2 cards. This card has to draw exactly 1 card, right?
Oh, really?
I think they should Errata Ancient Leaf so that you need to have 8,000 life points, pay 2,000, draw 2. That would be fair. What is with people trying to fix Ancient Leaf? Do we just have like such psychic damage from that like Master Rule 6 leak where
I was about to say, do you remember that?
Oh hell yeah, I bought a playset that day.
You bung it. Oh my god, you cannot say that. You really bought a playset?
No, but Doug, the opportunity cost was so low. I spent $6. If it was true, I would have been out 100. I mean, I guess I'll be the one to say it. This is way too broken. It's Pot of Greed. It's there's only 1 turn anyway. Who cares?
I think you're right. I think that it'd be good. Like, it's basically Brilliant Fusion with no garnets when you think about it. I think that it's just a card that if you draw turn 1, it is literally just the 2,000 life points doesn't matter. It's more just a restriction that you can't have taken any life points, but I think it'd be too strong. I think it'd be too good.
Life points, they're not super
I mean, UBell players were just recently playing the ancient map or whatever
race map? Oh,
God. Pay half their life to search, a UBell card. So I think we got to remember life points don't matter.
How much would this have to cost for you to feel like it was fair? If this card said
7,000,
do you think it would see play?
Honestly, at 7,000, I think it would still see play.
There's some people in chat saying it'd have to be $79.99.
Oh, I got some saying that too. I think if it was 72, that'd be pretty good because a lot of cards pay 8, so it would restrict you from doing that. All right, I have, unsurprisingly, the highest so far, 98% saying that this card cannot exist.
I have 76 on no. We messed around at my locals a couple of years ago and unbanned a bunch of cards. POG was set to 1, and whilst pretty much everyone used it, I can honestly say it did not have a huge impact. Greed is very good, but I'm sorry, it is not a busted card, and set to limited, it would be totally fine. At a casual level, it will just be a tiny boost, and at a pro level, it will be a tiny speed boost, and a prime target for hand traps. This argument should have ended years ago, and this card should be freed from its prison. This one's genius. It's so good.
If you don't draw it, it sucks.
Yeah, I don't know. How can you be like, I'm sorry, it wasn't very good. It was just in every single deck.
Yeah.
I also like, there's so much meat in this one. It's a prime target for hand traps. What hand traps? Ash?
So I will say, I don't think I put too many of those in there. That was one of the most common defenses of Pot of Greed being back, is like, oh, it'll just get ashed. Here's the thing. Well, two things. First off, if it always immediately baits the ash, that means it's probably too good. But also think about the situation where you activate a search effect, your opponent ashes that, and then you just Pot of Greed. Drawing 2 with tactics is very common, and this would just get you into that spot, but also not require.
So you could
your
go
opponent.
pot into tactics. I also like, my favorite part of this one is at a casual level, it will be a tiny boost, and at a pro level, it will be a tiny boost. Oh, okay. So why even delineate them? Why not just say it will be a tiny boost?
Yeah, well, you know, the card quality of both casual and competitive decks is exactly the same, so who cares about drawing 2?
I will say, I mean, I think the reason that you get ones like this is people misunderstand what Pot of Greed is. If only there was some video explaining it. But they think that it's a card that you activate and win immediately, like it's Exodia all rolled up into a spell.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the reason you play Pot of Greed is because it gets you more options in your deck that is already good. So, like, it's not going to feel like you are losing to Pot of Greed against Snake Eye. It's going to feel like you're losing to Snake Eye Ash. But cards that make it more likely to find those cards and an additional card are at a premium. So, I don't know.
I think we can even say from, like, just watching progression even, that, like, every time Pot of Greed is drawn, it's, like, a huge eye roll. It's like, oh, the Pot of Greed is, you know, I think that it's just a sacky one of that doesn't feel good to play against. All right.
Pot of Greed, good or bad? Chat,
pulls up,
is
chat.
It going to be a big deal?
Is it okay as a one of, because you won't draw it that often?
All right, I got a 260,000 people, or 260,000 points on bad. This person is bad.
Yeah. No, I got 83%, so makes sense. Just draw the out? Exactly. Just draw the out. Okay, this is an interesting debate right here. See, this is one that I'm like, I'm not sure what people are going to say. I would argue that Pot of Prosperity is statistically stronger, except for the once per turn drawback. Thoughts?
Oh man, people are gonna hate this one. They are 100% correct. They are absolutely correct.
What if it was at 1? Okay. I mean, I think there's an interesting argument to be made there about, like, because it handpicks the card.
Well, let me.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. Pot of Prosperity is a card with really well-designed downsides.
Okay.
The once per turn, the no drawing, and the extra deck shit all matters. Every one of those downsides matters. Even in decks that don't use the extra, a lot of the time it's like, it does cut off a little bit of options, you know, because the extra is just another hand. It is a really well-designed card in terms of drawbacks. I would not say that at present, Pot of Prosperity is better, except for the once per turn drawback. But if you ignore all the drawbacks, and you are in a vacuum thinking, what's better? Look at the top 7, pick 1, or draw 2 off the top.
Yeah.
I think it is the look at the top 7 and pick 1. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Exists in such a manner that a bunch of card advantage and playmaking capacity is isolated in very specific cards, right? And, like, if you draw 2 and it's like Poplar Oak, you would much prefer to be able to look at the top 7 and find Snake Eye Ash, right?
Yeah.
So a card that gets you closer to those cards that are your, like, big one-card combos, I think is more valuable than a card that probably will get you more. And if, you know, people have figured it out, the Freudian slip on 7 there. What I'm comparing here is exactly Dig Through Time. I'm legitimately just comparing it to Dig Through Time. One of the greatest cards in the history of time. And
I will say a counterpoint here is that, you know, not saying across the board, but throughout the years, you know, and even nowadays, a lot of decks do choose to play Extravagance instead of Prosperity. So I think there is an argument to be made that in some decks, Pot of Greed might just be as good. Like, I'm looking at this comment, I'm like, let's not ignore the drawbacks. I think the drawbacks have to be considered. And I think that looking at the top 6 is probably better. Like, just the effect might be better than Pot of Greed, because it's like super duality that has no restrictions. But, you know, I think that because people have played Extravagance, it, you know, clearly worse than Prosperity, but I think that that does make an argument for like Prosperity might not necessarily always be better than Pot of Greed.
I think that's a good point of comparison, because like Extravagance and Pot of Prosperity do compete for like the same slots in decks a lot of the time. Or sometimes there will be a 3-2 split, and like the one that gets 3, you know, is maybe a little bit better. But I think that the fact that some decks play more Extrav than Prosperity kind of shows that like it is kind of deck dependent.
Yeah.
Like in a deck like Fluon to
Well, because does Snake Eyes even play Prosperity right now? Do they have the room?
Snake Eyes don't play either. I mean,
so would Snake Eyes play Pot of Greed? I think so.
Yes, for sure. But like I'm thinking of a deck like Fluonderies. The Fluonderies needs to find like Robina, or like in a hand that has Robina needs to find Map, right? And like that's a card that can always do that, and it can give you like, but in a deck like Labyrinth, where there's no like one card combo, and you really just want like a bunch of traps and material.
Yeah, you want like discards for the furniture.
Yeah, exactly. So like I think it's kind of deck dependent. And for real quick on with respect to Snake Eye and Pot of Prosperity, the reason they don't play Prosperity has nothing to do with not wanting that effect. It's just that the extra deck
is so tight.
Like you want every card in it.
Yeah, you want a 20 card extra deck, so you can't get rid of. I mean, you could prosper 3, but. All right, chat. Let's see. I think this could go either way. All right. Oh, this is a very controversial one in my chat. This is not a joke. It literally ended on 50-50 exactly.
Wow. I had someone donate 300,000 points, but Prosperity did end up winning.
Really? Okay. By how much? Percentage-wise?
A lot. 75-25. It would be cool to have a list on the ban list of cards for that you can only have one of amongst all the cards on the list. Cards that are very, very powerful but not game-breaking cards like Pot of Greed, Graceful Charity, Delinquency, or Confiscation. You can choose one and only one.
So like a separate limited one list for like, you know, Pokemon and Ace specs, like someone in chat pointed out, kind of like the Rush Duel legendary cards.
It's literally legends from Rush Duel.
Yeah.
Ugh, I go to bat for Rush Duel all the time. I do not like the legend system.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's cool to have classic, iconic cards in your deck, but in practice, it only ever, one of two things only ever happens. Either they have to balance some crazy card in archetype around the fact that you can only play a single copy and it's not super likely you're going to find it, or you are picking the exact same card every time. It was really annoying when like they were like, the new legend system, look how cool this is going to be. And the way that it developed, everyone was just like, okay, fine, I'll put Graceful Charity in my deck.
I'd say, isn't like, Graceful one? Like, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, like there was just a de facto best legendary card for like a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rough. I like, oh cool, I drew the Saki one of that like I just get to play. Like that's not super enjoyable, even if you get to bat and be like, whoa, it's Graceful Charity.
Yeah. I think that the Ace spec in Pokemon worked better because Pokemon has so much draw power that like the Ace spec, you just assumed you were just like, oh, do they play computer search? Do they play super scoop up or whatever? But I think in Yu-Gi-Oh specifically I think this idea could work for certain cards, but I wouldn't want to see it on Saki one of spells that are unsearchable.
I agree.
I think there's a world where that works. But let's see. I got a lot of people in chat actually arguing the other way. So let's see if you guys agree or disagree with a limited one list for some of these cards that they're mentioning here. Pot of Greed, Graceful, Delinquent Duo, etc. I have 84% disagreeing with this, but that's not, not fully one way.
I wasn't expecting that either, but I have 91% disagreeing with it with a 265 Andy.
That's fair. Okay. Seems like people don't want that. Duel Links and Rush Duel have it, so I don't think it's impossible that this ever gets added to the TCG, but I do think it's unlikely.
I will say the way that it works in all the Rush Duel things I've played is really just frustrating. I wouldn't have a problem with it being limited to 1 or 2. Everyone has hand traps, and it's a random draw, unlike search cards that get you exactly what you want. Fog being random, especially today, is a +1, but the drawback is if you get a dead draw, which happens when you run 3 to 5 hand traps monsters that can't be summoned unless certain conditions are met.
12 likes, by the way. 12 likes. That's why
Wow.
I included this one.
We've probably already covered this, right? But I mean, one thing I do want to kind of push back on is the concept that drawing into hand traps is bad. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to combo every turn. You know, if you like pot tactics and you draw like Imperm, Ash, Nibiru, Droll, you're fine passing. You got to be like, oh, whatever. I'll try it again next turn. Fuck it.
Yeah. We don't even need to. No, this is just the same comment now that I'm seeing it. Okay.
Yeah.
No pulling that one. Oh, this is a funny one. I say Konami gives us 1 month of Pot of Greed being at 3 just for the fun of it, maybe for like the 30th anniversary or something. How do you like the idea, you know, just as a concept, Konami just fucking with us one ban list just for fun?
Well, I feel like they've done it in the past. You know, the Snatch Steal returned in 2013. But yeah, for sure. Why not? You know, it's do it like from August to September when there's like no events. We're just waiting on Worlds. Just ruin locals for us. See what happens. I think that's fun. Whatever.
Put it to 3. Honestly, if just only to stop this debate, put it to 3, and we'll know. We'll know. Let's see how you guys feel about 3 Pot of Greed for, let's say, yeah, 1 month. 1 month of 3 Pot of Greed.
Wow, that's crazy. We got a 98% said, yeah, let's go.
I have an over 90% as well. Okay, you've heard it here, Konami. Give us Pot of Greed back for 1 month.
Just release Pot of Weed, where you draw 2 cards from your opponent's deck.
So obviously, sure, Pot of Weed, funny, but what do you think about this concept of drawing 2 cards from the opponent's deck? Like, obviously right now, Snake Eyes tier 0, but just in general as a concept. Like, let's say there's multiple decks in the format. Would this, you know, Hearthstone does this a lot. I don't know if they still do, but with Priest cards, that was like their main gimmick for a while, was that they would take cards from the opponent's deck, which still was a +1, but less guaranteed.
So I think the use case for this card is like turn 1, you activate this card, right?
Yeah.
And you draw the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck, and then you go, you got it, and you scoop up really fast, and you put the cards into your deck box, and you walk out, right? That's like how you play this.
Yeah, hope you hit a bonfire.
This is a really hard one to place. I think it is a good card.
Mm-hmm.
I think that your opponent is going to put good cards in their deck. The downside is like you get an archetypal card for cards that you are not playing.
Right.
But a lot of those cards are fine out of context too. Like if you're playing against Lab and you draw like Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon, like now you know what your opponent's on and you have a piece of interaction.
Well, you can also like keep stuff hostage if you drew like a starter or like one of their lovely Labyrinth and just keep it in your hand. Like, you know, that would suck.
I think the card is actually not particularly powerful.
Okay.
It might see side play for the mirror
mirrors.
match in games 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But I think pretty much any scenario that occurs as a result of this card is going to feel like shit. Like I feel like it's going to be exclusively feels bad moments.
Real question: are you ashing the Pot of Weed? Probably not.
You do that?
Probably not. I don't think you'd ash it.
Add a card from the deck to the hand. I mean, you would be able to do that, right?
Yeah, you could ash it. Let's see, chat. I mean, I think there's arguments either way. I mean, so the agree is that you guys think it'd be okay to release. I have 80% agree that this card would be fine to release.
Ooh, we actually said 5149 on mine. Someone contributing 105,000. They said they do not want this card released.
Pot of Greed can come to 1, and I swear the format won't change. I agree with this. As we've been talking about, Pot of Greed is not a format warping card. It is just a unfortunate card to play against.
I think the issue here isn't that, if we put Pot of Greed to 1, then Snake Eye will be dethroned. I think it's just that the card is annoying.
I think it's like, yeah, would it change? No. Would it be worse? Sometimes? Yes. Can you imagine all the tournament reports from people like,
they had the pot.
Pot of Greeded, like, fuck, man.
Again, it's kind of like the masochist stuff where we're like, you can actually do a whole bunch of stuff that does not change the format even a little. But it does create a bunch of like really feels bad moments that you just don't want to exist in your card game.
I mean, that's how, like, if you guys go back, I've talked about the article before, not recently, but there's an article where they talk about when they didn't do this too often, but they talked about like the balance philosophy, and they talked about the first ban list, and they said that there was a point, which is true, where when you built your deck, there were literally 18 cards that were required to be played, all Saki 1-ofs, and then you would look, so you were only deciding on 20 cards in your deck. And while I know some people think that about hand traps, in a Master Duel, it is true for 10 spots, but in the TCG, like some decks don't play hand traps. Ash hasn't always been good in every, I mean, it's obviously very good, but it's not played in every deck. Decks play no, Branded often plays no hand traps, things like that. So
it's the 10th spot.
Oh, it is 9. It's 9. Yeah. Okay. This actually is not that clear cut. 60% agree, 40% disagree.
I didn't even run a poll. I don't care what you all think about this one.
That's fair. Last question here. Last question.
I imagine that eventually it will be power crept enough to be just okay. I remember when Upstart Goblin seemed impossible to unban because it made your deck into a 39 card deck. I imagine that the inability to interact with an archetype will eventually be just enough of a consider the card pog to be just okay.
So we're thinking of, long-term, 5-10 years, which is hard to predict, but I think we're making the argument like, I think they would have, but would full power tier limit play Pot of Greed? Maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't have. The crowd, they're gonna hate me for this, but should I say it? Should I say it?
They don't want me to say it. I think this is true. I think this is 100% correct. I know a lot of people are like, no, at some point, Pot of Greed is, at any point, Pot of Greed is going to have the capacity to draw you into good cards. And like, also true of Upstart Goblin. The reason Upstart Goblin is considered not playable right now is because a card in your hand that theoretically could be a hand trap and will get you one card deeper in your deck on your turn isn't a guarantee that you're going to be able to wield that card like as effectively as you would be able to.
Maybe if the game got to this point, it would be like a side deck card for going first.
Yeah. Like, I don't think that, I don't know if there's ever going to be a scenario where you wouldn't play it as a side deck card for going first. Maybe if they make, Drolls 2, 3, and 4. But I think that there is a real argument that it is super cuttable, especially in game ones.
Yeah. If we get to a point where every card in your deck is a hand trap or an archetype card, that's what 10
a hand trap or an archetype card that goes +5.
Yeah.
And competes for a normal summon slot, has some sort of opportunity cost attached where that it's not just good to draw into multiples blind.
Okay, chat. This is our last question. I thought this one would be pretty controversial. Let's see where you're at.
I do like chat saying, if Pot of Greed is no longer good, then Yu-Gi-Oh will be lost. People said that about Upstart Goblin as well.
Oh, there's lots of cards. I mean, I bet if you told people from, 10 years ago, well, more than 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that Monster Reborn isn't played anymore and Regeki's at 3 and isn't that popular. I mean, right now it's played in Tenpai, but in general, not very. I think that would, Mere Force at 3. I think it's very difficult to predict the direction that Yu-Gi-Oh is going to go. I have 69% agreeing that this could happen eventually.
I have 72 doing that.
Interesting. Okay, I mean, let's come back to this video in 5 years and see where, there was a time, I got a video where I was making fun of, I think it was 2017, where I was making fun of that, someone said Spellbook of Judgment could come back someday, and I was like, no way Spellbook of Judgment for Jowgen won't be good in the future. Well, it isn't. It just isn't it's hard to predict. It's hard to predict. Let us know what you guys think. I'm sure you already have been typing what you guys think about these comments from this video. I'm very curious. Thank you, MBT, for joining me today. Do commenters understand Pot of Greed? You guys let us know. Maybe.